It's been a long wait since October, since the Orioles' magical 2023 season came to a disappointing end. But here on March 28th, the O's are back on the field, and they were certainly back to their winning ways. I'll recap the O's opening day blowout victory over the Angels coming up on this live episode of the Locked On Orioles podcast.
You are Locked On Orioles, your daily Baltimore Orioles podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey there, Orioles fans. Today is Thursday, March 28th, 2024. A happy opening day, a very happy opening day, and welcome back into the Locked On Orioles podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. As always, I'm your host, Connor Newcomb, and coming up on today's episode, we will recap an opening day victory. Orioles 11, Angels 3, the final score from a sold-out Camden Yards on Thursday afternoon as Corbin Burnes make his O's debut. He was magical. The offense lit up the Angels pitching, and David Rubenstein undefeated as owner of the Baltimore Orioles. Thank you for joining us here on a live edition of the Locked On Orioles podcast here about an hour after the win for the O's on opening day. Or, of course, if you're just listening on audio when this gets posted later in the day, thank you as well. And we are going to basically get back to what this podcast looks like during the season. And I'm going to start with the 5 things you need to know from the Orioles' 11-3 opening day victory over the Los Angeles Angels. And the first thing you need to know is it was cold weather out there. We were a little worried about the rain, which subsided before the game started, but a hot start on offense for the Orioles. Patrick Sandoval got the start, the lefty for the Angels. And, the Orioles have had kind of a mixed bag against lefties the last 2 seasons, but they started off hot immediately, loading the bases in this game. Now, it helped that Gunnar Henderson worked a 4-pitch walk to lead off this game. It was a good sign that Henderson was leading off against a lefty, didn't do that really at all last season. Then Adley Rutschman just kind of dunks one into right field for a base hit. Ryan Mountcastle draws a walk, and all of a sudden, the Orioles have loaded the bases with nobody out in the first inning. Now, Anthony Santander got a little swing happy, but he busted it down the line to stay out of a double play. RBI fielder's choice tied the game at 1, and then Jordan Westberg with a clutch RBI single to make it 2-1 in the first inning. But they did not stop. They came back out there in the second inning and just continued on. Adley Rutschman with a 2-run single up the middle. O's got a sac fly in the inning as well. All of a sudden, they had 3 runs in the second, and they led this game 5-1 early. And not that it put it away at that point, but you were kind of feeling like, okay, the O's are just blitzing Los Angeles pitching. I mean, Patrick Sandoval, the opening day starter for the Angels, did not even last 2 innings. He leaves with 2 outs in the second inning, goes an inning and 2/3, 5 runs, 3 earned on 6 hits, 2 Ks, 2 walks. The Orioles forced him to throw 60 pitches to record just 5 outs in this game. And the crazy part about it was, and Brandon Hyde said it after the game in his post-game press conference, he was just so impressed with the quality of the at-bats by the Orioles in the first couple of innings to open up the season. And the first time around against a starter, the O's were well known for how well they did the second time through the order against starters last season. Well, they did it the first time this year. And what was so impressive is it's not like the Orioles squared up Sandoval at all. Sandoval threw 60 pitches. The Orioles offense only had 1 hard hit ball against Patrick Sandoval in this game. What they did was they worked the pitch count. They drew the 2 walks and got a little bit of luck involved, but they were patient. They swung at strikes. They took the balls. It was an impressive start to this game to jump out to this lead. And then it really just continued. I mean, the Orioles put up 11 runs in this game on 10 hits. They drew multiple walks. They started hitting the ball harder as the game went along as well. Despite having just 1 against Sandoval, they finished with 11 hard hit balls in the game through those 8 innings. And also 8 of the 9 Orioles starters had a hit in this game. The only one who didn't was Ramon Arias, and even he drew a walk. All 9 starters reached base for the Orioles in this game. Quite the impressive offensive output. Second thing you need to know from this opening day win is that Adley Rutschman, pound for pound, I know it's only been 2 of them, but is he the greatest opening day player of all time? The statistics right now are telling me yes. After Adley put on an absolute show last year at Fenway Park opening day, going 5 for 5, he did get out on opening day for the first time this year, but not before singling in each of his first 2 at-bats on opening day this year, finishing 2 for 4, had that 2 RBI single in the second inning, also drew a walk, scored 3 runs, and had 3 hard-hit balls, and also caught an amazing game behind the plate for Corbin Burns and others, which we'll get to later. He shines. He does shine. When eyes are on Adley Rutschman, I mean, the games that were supposed to start before this one, the Mets games and the Phillies games, each got rained out. And so the Orioles at 3 o'clock were the first game of the day on true opening day here in 2024. And for about an hour, the O's game was the only game on. So all eyes were on Baltimore. And Adley Rutschman just once again putting on a show, delivering when he needs to. Yes, you know how high he can go in terms of a star in this league. Might never reach where Gunnar Henderson can go. Might never reach where Corbin Burns can go. Maybe won't reach where Jackson Holliday can eventually go. But man, oh man, Adley Rutschman is just the core, the heartbeat of this team. And when he's on, he is just so fun to watch. And he's one of the young guys really leading this thing. But the third thing you need to know from the win on Thursday is that the vets, especially in the outfield, those kind of 3 main veterans, Austin Hayes, Anthony Santander, and Cedric Mullins, who have been together for a long time, they don't want to lose those spots. They feel those young players coming up on this Orioles roster. They do not want to give in. Great day for all 3 of them. Anthony Santander with a 4 RBI day, had the first RBI of the day with that force out in the first inning. Also hit the Orioles' first home run of the season. It was a 2-run shot in the 4th inning off of Jose Suarez to give the Orioles a 7-1 lead at the time. And he absolutely cranked that thing over the big wall in left field, 431 feet from the right side for Santander, 107, the exit velocity off the bat for him as well. He had a great day, just pounding the baseball truly in this game. And then there was Cedric Mullins, who was hitting a little further down the lineup against the lefty, got the start in center field, hitting 7th. And Mullins just kind of put the capper on this one. A 3-run homer in the 7th inning off of Jose Cisnero. Got a fastball that was up and out over the plate, and Mullins just clobbered it, pulled it to right center field. I thought we were going to have another Mike Trout robbery in center field at Camden Yards. We saw that amazing one about a decade ago against J.J. Hardy. He's had a couple of more against the Orioles over the years. Trout almost got to it, but Mullins just got too much of it. 3-run homer, went 403 feet, 103 off the bat for Mullins for his, of course, first home run of the season. It was nice to see him and Santander each go deep in this game. Mullins with the 1 for 4. And then Austin Hayes didn't have the huge swings, but he went 1 for 4 with a single and a walk in this game and played a nice left field out there at Camden Yards as well. And you see those 3, they know there's the Kausers and the Kerstads and the Stowers and eventually the Beavers and Fabians and Bradfields coming up through this Orioles outfield. They are not going to cede those spots so easily. And it's fun to see the Orioles vets contributing to this team as well. Fourth thing you need to know from opening day is that Dillon Tate finally took the mound again for the Orioles. After being maybe Brandon Hyde's most reliable middle reliever in 2022, Tate missed the entirety of the 2023 season with forearm and elbow issues. And I just kind of thought at some point he was going to get Tommy John surgery because he'd missed so much time. But apparently he got himself back healthy. He worked out at Driveline this offseason. He was good in spring training, and he made the team on opening day and came out of the bullpen in the 8th inning. Now, it was not the cleanest inning in the world, and the Angels did get 2 runs in the 8th, although Tate had a good chance of getting out of it. He loaded the bases with 1 out, forced a ground ball to short. Unfortunately, Jorge Mateo, who was making his first start at second base since 2021, spiked the throw to first, couldn't complete the double play. 2 runs came around to score on the error. And Tate, he got through the inning. He finished off the 8th. Now, his velocity was a little worrisome. Now, when it's your first outing of the year, it's cold. It's March 28th. You don't take a lot of stock in velo there. Most pitchers' velo, it's going to be a few miles per hour down, especially early in the season. But he was sitting 90 miles per hour on the fastball, maxed out. He hit 92 once. Tate back in 2022, when he was at his best, averaged 94 with the fastball, could run it up to 96 and 97 with that sinker when he really dig deep. So that is a little concerning. If he was sitting 92, we're saying, oh, okay, he'll get back to the 94. But when you're sitting at 90 miles an hour and you're used to 94 being your average, it's something to watch. However, I thought the changeup, the sinker, and the slider all had really good movement. He's still getting his ground balls. Dillon Tate is a guy where the velocity really helps him, but he is not a reliever who is reliant on the velocity. The movement on his pitches, especially that sinker, even at 90 miles an hour, can still get ground balls. But the velocity is certainly something to watch, because if he's just sitting 90 miles an hour, there's still going to be some concern for me in that elbow because he was up closer to the mid 90s in some of his outings in spring training. So just something to monitor. But the big thing is Tate, if healthy, is going to be a huge boost for this bullpen this season, and just fantastic to see Dillon Tate back on the mound in a game that counts for the Orioles. And the fifth and final thing you need to know from the opening day win for the O's over the Angels, that Corbin Burnes was just flat out incredible. O's make the trade for him this offseason. He makes his Orioles debut on opening day, and what a debut it was. 6 innings, 11 strikeouts, just 1 base runner, a home run from Mike Trout, and that was it. He dazzled in this game. And coming up next, we're going to break it down. How did Corbin Burnes dominate the Angels lineup? And how good could he be? How much could he lead this Orioles rotation, this Orioles team in general? Hopefully pitching every 5th day, hopefully giving the O's 30-plus starts, and hopefully leading them, marching them into the postseason again this year at the top of that rotation. We'll break down his first Orioles start coming up next. But first, this episode of the Locked On Orioles podcast is brought to you by Gametime. Now, we are into the Orioles season. And Gametime, if you want to get tickets, that's where you're going to want to go. Gametime is now an authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball, which makes getting tickets even faster and even easier. Let me tell you, it was already fast and easy to begin with. Prices on the Gametime app, they actually go down closer it gets to first pitch. And they've got killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their lowest price guarantee. Gametime, they just take the guesswork out of buying tickets. Now, I didn't go to opening day this year. I've only been once, but I am definitely looking to go either this weekend or next week against the Royals. And honestly, I'm intrigued to see Tyler Wells on Sunday. Maybe I want to head to the ballpark on Sunday. You just go to the Gametime app, and the tickets are right there. You can save up to 60% buying last-minute tickets for sports, including the Orioles. Buy them 5 minutes before first pitch. You'll still get them. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. For a limited time, all users can get $20 off any MLB purchase of $150 or more in the Gametime app with code FIRSTPITCH. Terms apply. That's code FIRSTPITCH, FIRSTPITCH, for $20 off from March 25th to April 14th only. Download the Gametime app today. Last-minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. So the Orioles win it on opening day. A spectacular victory for the O's, taking down the Angels 11-3 to open up the 2024 season at 1-0. And of course, we've got to break down what Corbin Burnes was able to do in his first Orioles start. Burnes, the ace of the Brewers staff for the last 4 or 5 years, in the final year of his rookie contract, coming over to the Orioles in a trade this offseason from the Brewers, where the O's sent, it was tough for them to part with some of these players, but sent Joey Ortiz, DL Hall, and an early draft pick to Milwaukee for what could be 1 year of Corbin Burnes if the O's don't re-sign him. But they knew he could be the ace of this staff. He could lead this team to potentially a World Series title this season. And he is the best pitcher the Orioles have had since Mike Mussina, full stop. And he put it all on display in his opening day start, his Orioles debut, one of the best Orioles opening day starts, one of the best Orioles debut starts ever. And it was Corbin Burnes doing it on Thursday. What a performance it was from Burnes. 6 innings of 1 hit, 1 run baseball with 11 strikeouts and no walks. The only run he gave up, a 2-out solo home run to Mike Trout in the top of the first inning. Mike Trout returning from his injury, homering in his first at-bat of the season. Listen, I hope Mike Trout has a big bounce-back year. He started it here. Couldn't really help a bad Angels team win the game. And then after that, Corbin Burnes did not allow a base runner after the 2-out home run by Trout in the first inning. He was ridiculous, and it only took him 82 pitches to get through 6 innings. Only 3 hard hit balls by Angels hitters. Of course, one was the Trout homer. The other 2 turned into outs. He was just fantastic. And quite honestly, you usually are a little more, kid gloves on with pitchers in their first start of the year when it's colder, just coming off spring training. Also, the score when he was leaving the game was 8-1. If this is a closer game and we're a little deeper into the season, Burns absolutely was coming back out for the 7th inning and maybe more. He'd only thrown 82 pitches. The only reason he left the game is because the O's were up big and it's your first start of the year. And why not? You're able to kind of pull him out now, especially because the O's have a lot of off days early in the season. It's not really going to impact the bullpen that Burns only went the 6 innings. But he was phenomenal with the 11 strikeouts. I mean, it was just punch out after punch out. And it's not the greatest Angels lineup, right? No Shohei Ohtani, but they had Anthony Rendon back in there. They had Trout back in there. It's still, especially the bottom half of that order is tough to watch. They had our old friend Aaron Hicks in there. It was cool to see him get a nice little ovation from the Orioles fans. Hicks, we talked about, he probably signed with the Angels because the Orioles had interest there. Probably signed with the Angels because, it's closer to his home in California, and the Angels probably give him a little better shot at playing time, which was true. I didn't know he was going to start in right field and bat second for the Angels. Of course, he signed with Anaheim this offseason. We wish him the best. Had a cool moment between him and Brandon Hyde before the game as well. But back to Burns, I mean, the stuff was awesome. The cutter, we know it's the best cutter in baseball. He throws it over 50% of the time. It was as advertised. He went out there. It was 41 cutters out of 82 pitches. So basically, exactly, actually, 50% of his pitches. And the velocity was actually up on that cutter. He usually sits around 94. He was sitting 95 and topped out at 97 miles per hour with a cutter. It's basically one of the hardest cutters in baseball as well. The stuff was looking pure. He only had 2 whiffs on the cutter. He usually gets a few more, but it was a lot of pop-ups, which he honestly looks for more so than swings and misses on that cut fastball. But the curveball was the pitch that impressed me most. It was his number 2 most used pitch, 20 curveballs out of 82 pitches, 8 swings, 6 swings and misses on the curveball. That was his strikeout pitch. Burns has talked this offseason about how he's added kind of a second different curveball, and you could see it. He had a little tighter, little more up and down drop on some of his curveballs. He had worked in that new pitch. You could tell it was just flat out disgusting. And then the slider had 4 whiffs on 7 swings. That was his 3rd most used pitch. And the thing that's just incredible about Burns is he threw 3 changeups, right? That's his number 4 pitch. He dumps it in there against lefties from time to time. Those 3 changeups were all disgusting. And he only threw 3 of them. And his 4th pitch is disgusting. That is how good Corbin Burns is. And he doesn't let a Mike Trout homer in his first inning of the year phase him. He just goes and attacks hitters one after the other, mows them down. He loses, the feel for the cutter, throws back-to-back balls, just goes to another pitch, goes back to the cutter. Doesn't even matter. He went 0-2 early in the game to Rendon. Threw 3 straight balls that weren't competitive, went to 3-2, just said, all right, we're going cutter down the middle, strikes him out to open the game. I mean, that's the kind of confidence the Orioles get with Corbin Burns on the mound. And it's just amazing to see what an ace can do. And it's nothing to take away with some of the good pitchers the Orioles have had over the years. Kyle Bradish was an ace last year. I mean, he finished 4th in AL Cy Young voting. He was fantastic. He's not Corbin Burns. Chris Tillman had some great years. We saw amazing moments from Kevin Gausman and Dylan Bundy and of course, John Means throwing a no-hitter. I mean, we saw some guys who could really pitch in Orioles uniforms. They are not Corbin Burns. They are not the true capital A ace that Corbin Burns is. The Orioles have just simply not had it since Mike Mussina left and signed with the Yankees. They just haven't had it until now. It is so fun to watch. Me as an Orioles fan, I've never seen it. Mussina left after 2000. I mean, I was 3 years old back then. I wasn't watching Mike Mussina pitch for the O's. This is the first time on this day, March 28th, I have seen a true capital A established ace pitch a game for the Orioles. And that is what it looks like. 6 innings, 1 base runner, 11 strikeouts, no walks. I get, again, Angels lineup, not great. Get used to dominance, though. That is the Corbin Burns as advertised. And wow, is that fun to watch. In the grand scheme of things, too, with the Orioles system and the way it's set up, they didn't give up a ton. I mean, I love Joey Ortiz, and I am one of the number 1 fans of DL Hall. And, Ortiz made the Brewers roster. He's going to play a lot. DL Hall not only made the Brewers roster as a starting pitcher, he's starting game 2 for the Brewers this year behind their ace, Freddie Peralta. I mean, shout out to Hall. I'm going to be cheering for him so much. But they're not Corbin Burns. And when you have a chance to get a pitcher like this, you go and do it. We saw all the people, he had a 9 ERA in spring training. Oh, what's wrong with Corbin Burns? He is a veteran in spring training. Numbers in spring training don't matter, but especially for established veterans, they don't matter at all. He's working on things, throwing all cutters, throwing all changeups, mixing things in. Those numbers don't matter. I knew he was going to be ready on opening day. look what he did. It is going to be fun to watch him go out there every fifth day in Baltimore this season. But Corbin Burns, that was a lot of fun. There were some other new Orioles that had a fun time on opening day. And I wanted to focus on the Orioles' new owner because David Rubenstein was officially named Orioles owner and control person on Wednesday. And now they're undefeated under his watch. I want to talk a little bit about that transition that became finalized this week to finish off the pod coming up next. But first, this episode of the Locked On Orioles podcast is also brought to you by PrizePicks. Now, we got a lot on in sports right now, right? The tournament going on, it's actually about to tip off in the Sweet 16 on the men's side. You got the NBA playoffs coming up. You can get on all that excitement with PrizePicks, America's #1 fantasy sports app. You can turn $10 into $1,000 with NBA, NHL, and college basketball entries. What do you do on the app? Well, you just log in, and what you do is you just pick more or less on anyone's stat line. It can be points, it can be rebounds, assists. In baseball, it can be hits, it can be strikeouts, anything like that. You just pick a player in a game, hit more or less, and then roll in the cash. So download the PrizePicks app today and use code LOCKEDONMLB for a first deposit match up to $100. Again, download the app today and use code LOCKEDONMLB for a first deposit match up to $100 at PrizePicks. Pick more, pick less. It's that easy. So what a day it was for Orioles fans. What a day it was for the O's. What a day it was for Baltimore. Opening day on Thursday, the O's defeat the Angels 11-3 to kick off what should be a special 2024 season. And it was fun to watch for a lot of people, but maybe no one more than David Rubenstein, who spent Thursday as his first full day as Orioles owner. Rubenstein, who it was reported was purchasing the Angelo's share of the team back in January. It was finally fully approved by the other MLB owners on Wednesday. They held a vote. Unanimously, the other 29 owners voted yes on David Rubenstein, and on Wednesday, he became control person of the Orioles. Had a press conference Thursday morning at Oriole Park, and then was at the ballpark Thursday, was out on the field for the first pitch on opening day, all the festivities. David Rubenstein was there. And if you want to learn more about Rubenstein himself and what he could do with the Orioles, I've done multiple episodes so far this offseason since the news broke about what could happen there and who he is as a person and as a baseball owner. But it was kind of cool to hear from him on Thursday and start to think about what his initial plans are going to be, because he ran out of time to really spend any money this offseason, right? He was approved on Wednesday, season started on Thursday, and he could bump the payroll up a little bit, especially by the trade deadline to go and get some big pieces. But really the first big test for Rubenstein will be next offseason. Right now, it's just about, kind of repairing some of the bonds in the city and with others and inside the Orioles, and, maybe started to get to work on the planning of what they're going to do with that $600 million to upgrade Camden Yards. Jim Palmer certainly called out the sound system and how terrible it is multiple times on the broadcast. That needs to be the first thing they fix at the ballpark. But a couple of things I took away from, the different parts of the media that Rubenstein talked to is just, he's talked big about letting Mike Elias do his thing, letting him run the team the way he wants. And hopefully it just becomes a partnership where Rubenstein allows Elias to do the things he's great at, but offers him more resources, more money to spend when there is a player they really want to go get. Hopefully that is a perfect marriage right there. And he said a lot of the best things. He wants to bring a World Series to Baltimore. Our old friend Nathan Ruiz chimed in again when Rubenstein had that quote and just said, yeah, that's the big difference from Angelo saying we need to do the concerts first and foremost. It is certainly a huge difference there. And, it was just nice to see him around the ballpark, see him getting cheered, see a new leaf be turned over in Baltimore. I mean, that's the great thing here. And Rubenstein is a Baltimore native. He went to City College. He grew up in the city. He grew up going to Orioles games, going to World Series games, big fan of the O's. And I think the best thing when he talks, he's still got the Baltimore accent, still pronouncing the name of the city the right way as well. And David Rubenstein, I got to say, on the broadcast, if you were at the game, hope you had a great time. But if you were at home watching on the Masson broadcast, Rubenstein was in the booth with Kevin Brown and Ben McDonald and Jim Palmer for the entirety of the second inning. When Corbin Burnes was awesome in the top half, and then the Orioles scored 3 runs and knocked Angels starter Patrick Sandoval out of the game in the bottom half. So Rubenstein was there for a while. And the conversations that he and Jim Palmer were having were just unbelievable. I mean, first of all, Ben McDonald asked him about buying the Magna Carta for $21 million. Then Ben McDonald basically asked him, like, what is the Magna Carta? Rubenstein went into that. Rubenstein talked about his upbringing, going to games as a fan. And, sometimes a lot of that is pandering. Oh, yeah, I loved the Orioles when I was a kid. I went to all these games. I went to the World Series. Jim Palmer kind of started grilling Rubenstein a little bit in the booth. And David Rubenstein was up for the task. I mean, him and Jim Palmer were sitting around just remembering some guys. And there is no better time than just sitting around and remembering some guys. And he was not just saying, oh, I loved, Brooks Robinson and I love Frank Robinson and I love Jim Palmer. He's pulling, Gus Triandos. He's pulling Milt Pappas. He's pulling Jim Gentile from the old Orioles of the 60s and 70s. I mean, Rubenstein knew his ball. He was going toe for toe with Jim Palmer in terms of just remembering random events in Orioles history. And I mean, it's just A+ pandering. And it was honestly hilarious, him in the booth for that second inning. And then you have the rest of the ownership group and Michael Arrighetti and others, going to pickles before the game and announcing to the crowd who they are and buying everybody a beer and pickles. I mean, that's A+ pandering, right? That's something John Angelos would have never done. And we'll see how this ownership group plays out as the days and the weeks and months and years go on. But that is how you kick off your ownership group, right? You go on the broadcast, you talk about how much you love the O's, you talk about how you want to keep things going, you talk about how you want to win a World Series, you take pictures with the fans, you buy people beer and pickles. Like, it's truly that simple. And there's owners around the league that do it well. There's owners around the league, including John Angelos, that just didn't get it, that's how you just do it. Use your money to make O's fans happy. It's really quite simple. And it seems like on day one, David Rubenstein and his ownership group have passed that test. And hopefully this vibe has been curated by this new group coming in, just continues through this 2024 Orioles season. What a day, what a moment, what an opening day. One of the best ones in memory for the O's. And I get it, right? The Angels don't have Shohei Ohtani. They are not going to be a good team this year, but the O's let them know that early in the year with an 11-3 win to kick things off on opening day. Thank you so much. If you tuned in for the live stream here, make sure you are liking, commenting, and subscribing to the Locked On Orioles YouTube channel. It's going to be a fun season. This was only game 1 of 162. We're going to have all the Orioles coverage you could possibly need right here on the Locked On Orioles YouTube page. If you're listening on audio, that's amazing as well. Wherever you listen, whether it's Apple Podcasts or Spotify, if you could please leave a 5-star rating and a review, that helps out the pod tremendously. And we got a brand new season, a lot of expectations for the O's, a lot of people picking the O's to get to the World Series, to win the World Series. I mean, there's a lot of heat on the Orioles right now. Tell your friends about it. Tell anybody you sat with at opening day today. Tell the people you watched the game with. Tell them to check out the Locked On Orioles podcast. We're going to have all the coverage all year. And we're still coming back with another episode tomorrow, a Friday pod. The Orioles are off tomorrow. You always leave that off day after opening day just in case it rained, and the Orioles almost had to use that off day today. They had to use it last year, but they will not play tomorrow. That doesn't mean we're not having a podcast, though. Tomorrow, we're going to break down the opening day roster because we got that full 26 players, and we had a couple of surprises, right? Jacob Webb on the paternity list, so Nick Vespi gets to be on the opening day roster for the first time. Tony Kemp does make the team. We'll talk about how the Orioles went through their lineup against a lefty on opening day, talk about the roles on this team, and preview the rest of this series between the Orioles and the Angels. But that's coming up tomorrow morning, Friday morning, when we return. Until then, I'm Connor Newcomb, and this has been the Locked On Orioles podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.